It wasn't the cold that haunted them. It was the sound. For 281 days, 28 men had lived inside a vise. They were trapped in the Weddell Sea, prisoners of a frozen ocean that wanted them dead. They listened as the ice hunted their ship. It tested the hull. It squeezed. And on October 27, 1915, the ice decided it was time to finish the job. The wood didn't just break. It shrieked, a high-pitched, agonizing wail of tearing timber that vibrated through the men's boots and settled deep into their bones. Every groan of the ship felt like a physical blow. A year earlier, this was the last great prize of the heroic age of exploration. The Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition, the goal, to cross the White Continent on foot. The leader, Sir Ernest Shackleton, a man whose ambition was rivaled only by his reckless optimism. When they stopped at South Georgia Island, seasoned whalers had warned him. They looked at the dark, choked waters and told him it was the worst ice year in memory. But turning back was not in Shackleton's nature. He had the perfect tool, the Endurance. She was built in Norway by master shipwrights, designed specifically to dance with the ice. Her hull was a fortress nearly 30 inches thick in places, constructed of solid oak and wrapped in a skin of incredibly hard green heartwood. Her bow was a battering ram. She was built to withstand millions of pounds of pressure. She was designed so that if the ice closed in, she would squeeze upward, rising above the crushing flows like an apple seed pinched between your fingers. They sailed south just as the world exploded into the First World War. Leaving the horrors of Europe behind, they sailed toward a different kind of slaughter, one conducted in a silence so profound it felt heavy. By January 1915, the Weddell Sea began to show its teeth. The summer had been unusually cold. The winds, which should have blown the ice apart, pushed it together, creating a dense, impenetrable jigsaw puzzle. The trap was set before they even realized they had walked into it. The ocean hardened around them. January 19th. The Endurance is frozen solid. The mission is over. Survival begins. The fires in the boilers are allowed to die. Then comes the polar night, for months of absolute, suffocating darkness. Below decks, the rich, as they called their living quarters, became a psychological pressure cooker. The air was thick with the smell of blubber smoke, unwashed bodies, and mounting dread. They played cards, they sang, they tried to maintain the illusion of a normal ship routine. Outside, the temperature dropped to -30 degrees. The sled dogs whimpered in their ice kennels. But the real enemy wasn't the cold. It was the pressure. The crew called it the pressure. The ice field wasn't static. It was a living, breathing ocean of solid matter, driven by deep currents and violent storms thousands of miles away. When the massive flows collided, the force was unimaginable. The men would listen in terror as the ice roared like distant heavy artillery, or hissed and squeaked like a tortured animal. The Endurance was designed to rise, but she was frozen too tightly. The ice gripped her keel and refused to let go. Instead of lifting her, the ice began to squeeze her ribs. For months, the men tried to sleep while their world screamed. Around them, the decks began to buckle. The doors jammed in their frames. They were living inside a dying animal. feeling its heartbeat slow. October 24th, the beginning of the end. A massive pressure wave hits the ship. The Endurance is thrown onto her beam ends. She's leaning over 30 degrees. Below deck, men are thrown from their bunks. Equipment smashes against the bulkheads. And then comes the terrifying sound of rushing water. Down in the engine room, the ship's carpenter, Chippy McNeish, is fighting a losing war. He is chest deep in freezing black water, his hands numb, desperately trying to build a wooden cofferdam to stop the leak. He works until his muscles lock, until he is dragged out by his crewmates. They pump for 3 grueling days. They pump until they collapse in the freezing slush, coughing up blood and exhaustion. But the ocean is infinite, and their strength is not. The sounds become sickening. It's not just wood breaking, it's the sound of structural annihilation. Massive iron bolts, thick as a man's wrist, shear off under the tension and shoot across the deck like cannon shrapnel. The heavy oak beams splinter and explode outward. The keel rips off. The rudder is twisted into a useless pretzel of iron and wood. The destruction of the Endurance is one of the most harrowing moments of human survival ever recorded. We are dedicated to documenting these moments where engineering meets catastrophe. If you want to see more deep dives into history's darkest hours, leave a like and subscribe to The Disaster Architect. Your support helps us unearth these stories. At 5 p.m. on October 27th, the water reaches the engine room plates. The fires are drowned. The heart of the ship stops beating. Shackleton makes the only choice left. He looks at his exhausted men, his voice calm amidst the wreckage of his dreams. "She's going, boys. It's time to get off." They unloaded the dogs, the lifeboats, and what little food they could carry, stumbling over shifting, cracking ice in the twilight. They set up ocean camp on a fragile floe, thousands of miles from civilization, with no radio, no hope of rescue, and the terrifying knowledge that the ice beneath their feet could split open and swallow them at any second. They watched from their frozen purgatory as the ice slowly digested their home. Over the next 3 weeks, the Endurance was crushed into kindling. On November 21st, she finally disappeared into the black water. Shackleton wrote in his diary, "At 5 p.m. she went down by the head. I cannot write about it. The Endurance was gone, an engineering marvel crushed by the indifferent cruelty of nature. 28 men were now adrift on a melting continent. The disaster was over. The impossible journey of survival had just begun."